morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. I have Tim with us, and we have Alex Chaia from Catalyst Futures. A lot going on in the world. Israeli ceasefire. The president's cabinet seems to be all sussed out. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about the new Treasury Secretary designate. Stories that I've heard, and I don't know how true they are. Maybe you can add some. But he was responsible with Stanley Druckenmiller for taking down the British pound on that way back when, the Soros assault on the UK pound. So, and he's supposedly a key figure in dollar policy. He's got a lot of thoughts about the dollar, and he's going to be the guy that's going to help transform the debt, change the debt picture, how we fund it. So, curious to hear your thoughts overall, and see where it goes. Good morning, Alex. Good morning,
Good
Tim.
morning. Yeah, very nice to speak to you again, Fred. And you're absolutely right. He was one of the main guys, pivotal guys in the Black Wednesday, 1991, 1992, where Soros got famous to be the man who broke the Bank of England as well. And then there was this Wednesday there that $1 billion profit went to Soros
Right.
Fund Management on betting against the British pound. Yeah. And he has a very impressive track record in general as a hedge fund manager, and on taking risky positions,
Yeah, not
which
afraid of risk. Yeah.
yeah, which I'm not sure that's what you want in the U.S. Treasury, but maybe I
You know,
was
I
thinking a
was
lot
told a
about
long
that.
time ago it's okay to take risk if you could quantify the risk. And I think our current Treasury Secretary and a few of the ones in the past had no idea what the risk was. So maybe this is the right guy.
Yeah. Well, look, once the U.S. Treasury has this, the Exchange Stabilization Fund, the ESF, right, which it's basically managing a portfolio of currencies for the U.S. government. And if you manage that like a hedge fund, surprising the market, I think there are benefits, of course, in terms of managing the debt, maybe having a dynamic risk approach towards the mix of currencies that the treasury holds, but it can also affect the market in surprising ways and erode like the trust in the treasury. It has a very wide possible consequences.
You
And I
know,
think the earliest example of that is the SNB intervention in 2015, when the Swiss National Bank intervened in the market and removing the pegging. And what they were doing is basically managing the Swiss bank as a hedge fund, and it was great for them, but for everyone else, trading was dangerous.
That's right. Yeah.
I think this is a conversation that really leans into what the role of the market is. I mean, a market is essentially a collective opinion, and people express their opinion through their bids and offers and their actions. And he expressed an opinion back in '91 that said, the Bank of England is pursuing an irrational course, and I'm going to express my opinion by doing X, Y, Z, shorten the pound in that case. And
Yeah.
we used to call them the bond vigilantes back in the '90s and the early 2000s. And the bond vigilantes, I mean, they showed up a couple of weeks ago when the Fed dropped rates 50 basis points, and the market took the 10-year up 50 basis points, and then the Fed dropped another 25, and the market took the 10-year up. The bond vigilantes were essentially saying to the Fed, we're not going to tolerate an irrational approach to short-term interest rates. We want to be compensated for the kind of inflation you're creating, and therefore, when we invest in the 10-year, we're going to demand a premium, an interest rate premium, and they took it
Mhm.
up. And I think this guy is probably an example of that. And they say that, I forget which Fed chairman, uh, way back in the 60s or 70s, said the
Miller.
Fed's job is to lean into the wind I don't think he's going to lean into the wind. I think he's probably going to take a stand and say, this is a rational policy, therefore my actions in the markets are going to support that rational policy. Or it's irrational and my actions are going to support it. So since he's on the side of the Treasury, I think we're going to see his opinion expressed through Treasury actions.
So rolling the debt further out. What I've been
Uh,
reading is that Yellen has really short funded it, moved everything up. So we have, short term rates when short term rates were much lower. It's a lower debt position. But as you move it out, you take the pain up front because of the higher debt. But at least you'd know where you're locked in for the next 10, 20, 30 years.
well, I think, if I had to respond to that, if either one of you guys were Treasury Secretary, you'd probably look at the calendar and say, I need XYZ funds. I got to fund a quarterly refunding, and I'm going to need, you know, I don't know, some number of dollars. And where's the most sensitive part of the curve, and where can I get my funding the cheapest? This guy's going to look at this like a tactician. He's going to look at the curve and say, you know what, the 10 years a bargain, or the 20 years a bargain, and he'll shift his borrowing into that sector. So I think we're going to see a lot more of the yield curve plays, 5 against 7 year, 5 against 30 year, that kind of thing. I think this is going to be a yield curve sensitive treasury.
Mm. It's an interesting point, and it may actually be an opportunity to follow the Treasury, whatever they are doing in their auctions, and trying to catch up with them in the same direction rather than fighting against them.
Yeah, Yellen didn't do that.
Yeah.
There was you got the sense that there was no yield curve analysis going on with their
Yeah.
calendar and their action. They just said, "Oh, I think we'll borrow short, or
Right.
this guy's going to look at this and say this sector of the curve can stand a refunding, so I'm going to focus on this sector of the curve." And I think the government market is going to be an interesting place, but it'll be a much more efficient market
Mm.
than we've seen.
Well, yeah, let's hope, because I think there's going to be a lot more auctions, right? And it seemed like the last couple have had some trouble getting funding.
Do you think there will be more volatility than we have right now?
I think
Initially,
less.
yes.
I
I
think
think
less.
initially, yeah.
Yeah, I think you know putting a professional bond trader in charge of this massive funding can't help but be a better situation. They threw darts, and it was kind of haphazard the way they conducted um, their refunding, and the needs were enormous and continue to be. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting time, but I think with a more professional approach to the funding, they've hired a professional funder now, I think, to fund the government.
Yeah.
What about a stance on dollar policy? There's been a lot of talk about what Trump wants to do, what Vance has spoken about, and there's going to be a huge demand. Tim, I know you and I have spoke about it. Huge demand coming in as U.S. and foreign corporates start to move back to the U.S. to avoid some of these tariffs. I've read one piece that said they think this guy who follows Abenomics and what the Japanese have done, he's going to intervene to weaken the dollar. What are your thoughts?
I'll pass it over to
Well,
Alex. What do you
the
think?
dollar has gained a lot of value against multiple currencies. Of course, there is the world right now, whether it's Latin America or Europe, it's all on a socialist, expensive agenda. And the currencies would depreciate anyways. But the fact is that the dollar has gained a lot of value against everyone else. And just an example, an acquaintance of mine works for a Danish wind energy company, and to estimate the cost of doing one of their plants in the U.S. for the same size, same number of professionals, costed 3 times more than in Denmark. You know? So that tells you how much expensive the U.S. got compared to the rest of the world in terms of income from the employees and everything, and that's a currency uh, uh, alignment as well.
So you're saying that's not sustainable?
No, what I'm saying is not a bad idea to devalue the dollar. That's my personal perception.
Uh, you've got this short-term, long-term play going on, and the fundamentals. There's a lot of reasons you can buy or sell a currency. One is interest rates. The other is real interest rates. Another is funding necessity. But I think in times, in major investment climates, capital flows drive everything. And I can't see any reason why anybody's going to stay out of the U.S. here. I see capital inflows.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, look at France. I was reading today that they might be facing a vote of no confidence. That whole government may have to resurrect itself. Um, all of Europe is facing a Russian bear, and their defense budgets are going to have to go up. I don't know where the UK stands on that, um, but certainly Western Europe, the continent has has some problems, and you don't want to be in the euro in that environment. So you got a negative, big negative for the euro overhanging the market, and you got a big positive for the dollar in terms of sucking in available capital flows from the rest of the world. Where we used to focus on interest rates, I think interest rates are just going to float where they go. I could see an attempt to push down the dollar, like taking a big beach ball in a pool and trying to hold it on the floor, and then stepping off it and watch it pop up, 25 feet in the air. That's the way it looks to me. And, I think you could get sucked in by following this policy. Oh, they're going to lower the dollar for trade reasons. And then all of a sudden you find yourself facing four square capital flows where foreign corporations are coming into the U.S. or foreign investors are coming into the U.S. because of the better fundamentals.
Yes.
Just on a numbers basis, I mean, euro is 104. I don't remember seeing it below parity, about below 100. Dollar yen up at 154, 150 something, up.
Well, yen's
Those,
a whole other animal. I mean, the carry trade drives the yen, to the extent that there's a big carry and they reduce the carry. That's the whole factor there. But in the U.S., I bet you if we had this conversation a year from now, we'd be wondering whether the euro was going to get up to one. I could see it. I could see it in the 90s.
hmm, okay. What about the LATAM currencies? Dollar Mex?
Oh, there is a whole situation with the budget in Brazil. So very similar to the UK. It's a government that spends a lot of money. They, like yeah. So always exceeding the budget that was given by Congress. And this, uh, as the dollar is gaining value against everything else, that would already happen, but because of this situation, it gets even worse, right? So yeah, the Brazilian real has lost a lot of value. Argentina is a different story because their inflation and interest rates are so high. Even though it's getting better, it's far from ideal. Like you have like 100% interest rate still. So it's so the
Did they have a
currencies.
capital market? I mean, I don't follow Argentina that much, except when Milei came in, it started to look a little bit more. But is there a capital market can sustain some of those inflows? Is that growing?
Yeah, that is growing. Yeah, their indices are growing. The capitalization is growing, especially from Argentinian companies outside of Argentina with shares listed at NYSE or Nasdaq.
Hmm.
That's
I'm
starting
just a
to look
casual
better.
observer. I'm sorry, Alex. I thought you were done. I'm just a casual observer of Latin America, but my gut is saying buy Argentina and short everything else against it until they wake up. This is
Yeah,
a global phenomenon going on there. We're this is an amazing time. There's been probably a handful of times in the last 50 years where you can point to the phenomenon. And I think the U.S. is Argentina really was the prototype, and the U.S. is leading the way with Argentina. A couple of, Hungary maybe, um, different places throughout the world, different governments are starting to shake their head loose and say, we got to get back to capitalism, and we need
Yeah.
fundamentally a way to encourage investments. And this is really an amazing time for that. I can't recall a time like this. Maybe the early '80s with Reagan.
Yeah, we're going to retrace back 40 years, right? That's what That's what we're going to do, right? Because
Not to mention that Argentina is the biggest upside available in the world right now, because they suffered so much for so many years, and it's an educated population with
Hmm.
very entrepreneurial people, and
Rich in natural resources too. I mean, you might want to
absolutely.
buy Argentina, sell Brazil, buy Argentina, sell. I don't know about Mexico. Mexico. We got a new president, and she seemed to have responded very quickly to Trump's tariff message yesterday.
Mm.
yeah, I saw Canada. I saw a chart when he announced some tariffs in Canada. Dollar Canada shot up, and I guess that's going to continue because I think
Yeah,
uh, the Trudeau
25%
government,
tax on Canada, and
yeah,
that's the idea, right?
and politically, I
Uh,
think if we go back to, as you say, back to capitalism, I think the Trudeau government's going to have some problems going forward as well.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. You got the woke countries against the non-woke countries, and that may be a way to play the capital flows. And
Yeah,
it's funny, but it's sad. You know,
it
um,
yeah,
is. It is.
I mean, I lived in the U.S. for the last 4 years, and I've been watching. Every day we sit and talk and shake our heads and say, what are these guys thinking? And now it looks like the public woke up and said, "No, we're not stand for this anymore." Um, this was a
Alex,
revolution.
you're sitting in London, and I know Starmer's getting some bad press, at least on this side of the Atlantic. What's it like at home?
Well, taxes are going up on everything here, and the next day of the budget, the price of a coffee, is I'm not even in the city center. I'm like half an hour away, and the coffee prices here went from £3.50 to 4.50, like a cup of coffee, and yeah, it's not a fancy neighborhood or anything like this, like in Mayfair now it's £6 a cup of coffee, and this was the next day of the budget announcement,
Wow.
because to hire employees, they said, no, we're not going to tax the working people. But they did, like indirectly they did, because you tax the
The businesses,
who is
yeah.
giving employment.
You tax the businesses and it filters down, right?
And I quote, he said, like, if you own stocks, you're not working class. That's a quote,
Wow.
Really,
Wow.
that I
that's
call it
anti-capitalist. That's anti-woke.
Yeah.
extremely, extremely. But and
Like
the
capitalists, yeah.
approval rating, like, collapsed, collapsed.
So
But
this is where the vigilantes, I'm going to call them financial vigilantes, show up. I mean, they take positions based on opinions like that, and that's definitely negative for the UK. I think we're in that age. We're in that age where the markets are going to force their opinions on our leaders, and the leaders will have to cave into the markets, or else they'll face recessions.
yeah, not to mention, and that's something I was thinking about when we were discussing about Scott uh, from the U.S. Treasury.
So,
Like, if you manage the largest exchange, the currency fund in the world, which is the U.S. Treasury, and if he knows how to play this, like, the U.S. debt can be paid on on managing the currency of other countries. You know what I mean? Like, by, I don't know, shorting the pound again, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, you think we'll see that? We'll see the U.S. Treasury call out the Fed and saying, I don't like where the pound looks. Uh, go sell a couple of 100 million short and see how it looks,
Yeah,
how it
instead of
survives.
1 billion, it will be 10 billion on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing
Could be.
about that is, you guys probably don't remember, but there was a period where every year around Easter, you would short the French franc because the French franc devalued big on Easter. And that was the trade, you'd have it on your calendar. Easter is this date in April, get short the week before. And then the French National Bank took rates up to 10,000% uh, for to squeeze the short sellers. The Bank of England did that in
Well, when
'68.
I
Right?
worked at SocGen in 1979, and there were French devaluations, and Jeff, who was the chief dealer, still a good friend, would say we don't have to be short the French franc, we just have to be long balances.
Yeah.
So you go out and borrow 1 week, go out and borrow 1 month, 2 months. You borrow French francs at 12, 15, 18%, and you've funded day to day at 1,000%. You don't have to do it for that long to make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
But that was the key in the devaluation. They would use interest rates as the tool to fight the devaluation.
Imagine sitting in a country where your short term rates go up to 10,000% just because you have to punish the speculators. You
Yeah.
know, but we could be there, and I think Alex, what you're saying is the U.S. Treasury might be part of that process.
Yeah, that would be by the resume of this guy. I would expect that. You know.
That'd be an
Do you think
interesting.
do you think there's a possibility that we could have a snap election in the UK?
Mm, I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet. I think no. I
Not
think
yet.
no.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting
But I'm
time.
hearing that in France that will happen. Mm.
It's what? I'm sorry.
In France, the
In
it's more
France, yeah.
critical,
I think
the political term.
we're at a situation now where uh, different countries are going to coalesce with one another based on how conservative or how liberal their leaders are. I think we could see trade deals. I've said this about Argentina. When Argentina, Milei, 4 or 5 weeks ago, told the BRICS, no thanks, I'm not interested. That was a really major decision. And now imagine you're Trump and you're facing this BRICS agenda. You say, you know what, I can't let this happen. I'm not going to let this happen. Whoever's my friend on this is going to get a trade deal. It's going to look good because I can't. I'm not going to tolerate an attack on the dollar's reserve status, and I suspect that that's how he sees BRICS. So I think BRICS is taking a back seat for 5 years or so, at least until Trump uh, gets done with whatever he's going to do. But the countries that side in with them, specifically against BRICS, are going to be good investment opportunities.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Do you agree with
Another.
that, Alex?
No, I totally agree, and I don't know if I mentioned to this before, but I have contact with many Brazilian farmers, agricultural producers, and I can guarantee you that none of them want a BRICS currency.
Uh-huh.
You know, they have to pay for their seeds to Cargill or to some other in US dollars, and when they use, they go to Disney World, like, and or to Florida to spend their money. They want dollars as well. So what are they going to do with Russian rubles or
Yeah.
Chinese yuan? They're not interested in that.
Yeah. Well, I
And
think we're in a fade the BRICS environment here.
Yeah.
yeah, so
You were fearful
why
of the
would
BRICS.
adopt a currency that your exporter, your main exporter, does not want? So
Hmm.
it's it's a strange play that Brazil is doing in the international sphere.
Another UK based question for you, Alex. I remember when Trump was elected 8 years ago, the the UK populace, the people, were not a fan. He was. They would had the big balloons outside. They were very anti-Trump. Is it the same sentiment now, or do you think that's changed a little bit in the last 8 years, given what's happened in the U.S. and what's happened in the UK?
I think most Europeans are afraid of Trump in many sense. They think like it's retrograde, and if you the media here is very much against his agenda and who he is, and more to from a leftist standpoint. So I think that's a general sentiment, which seems to be eroding, but it's still the mainstream.
Well, let me ask you a question then. The media has shifted in this country, and we're making a move from network media control to podcast media control.
Yes.
Social media is gaining quite rapidly against network media. We've talked about this. Um, do you see that happening in the UK as well?
Absolutely. The alternative media is growing a lot. So in the last budget, they increased the BBC budget. I think, if I'm not wrong, about £4 billion more. Um,
So you responded to the last question by saying, the media is anti-Trump, but is social media pro-Trump?
well, yes, yes, and there's a lot of trying to control that. Unfortunately, um, it's really difficult to watch foreign media, even at the moment. You'll get blocked because of oh, this content cannot be viewed in your country. Many times happens, and not only with Russian media or something. If I'm trying to watch Fox News from you guys, for
Mhm.
example, I can't. You know? You have to
Really?
go through a VPN or something because they block that.
I
You're in
know.
London, Freddie's in New Jersey, and I'm in Florida. I'm retired. We go out to dinner a couple of times. This last 2 weeks, we went to a couple of local places to have dinner. And 2 weeks ago, we went to this place close by, and it was Latin night, and the whole place was Hispanic, and everybody was wearing Trump hats and red suits, and they were playing, God Bless America. And then we went to another place in West Palm last week. We had a mutual friend that was entertaining, Johnny T, and it was the same thing. And I'm wondering if it's because I'm sitting near West Palm, Florida, or is this going on throughout the country? Because this is something that I haven't seen since the Reagan years.
Right. I think people had cover. They were shielded. They were hiding. Of saying, like, when the first polls came out when Trump ran in 16, everything was underpolled. The conservatives were hiding in the background. Now I think they're, as you say, taking their hats out of the closet, putting them on, and walking outside with it. So I think there's certainly some more of that. And that was really my question. As there were riots and anti-Trump riots in the street in London, I remember 8 years ago. And is it possible that you see that again, or is
Oh,
you know
for sure, for
you
sure.
you're still going to see anti-Trump
Yeah,
protests?
and they will get a lot of attention, even if it's just like 10 people there.
Okay.
That's the point, you see? Like,
So you
oh, no.
so you won't get the big crowds, but you will get the big
If
push
you're
from the
walking
media.
around there, you see like it's a small group of people for whatever cause, and then like you see like a big news thing.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
the
Yeah, I
farmers
think
did a big demonstration recently here in the UK. I don't know if it arrived for you guys because they changed something in the inheritance tax that they had for farms because
Yeah.
they were not subject to a certain percentage, and now they are. And the consequence is like most farmers now, when they die, they will have to the people who inherited will have to sell parts of the farm to pay the taxes, and
Right.
this is the end of family farming in the UK. So they came with their tractors in London and then blocked a number of streets.
I know the big one was the guy who had that Netflix show, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
The
true,
Lord,
true.
he was a Lord something, and he was a personality, TV personality,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah,
getting a lot of press here. I've seen that come up a couple of times.
yeah.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt
So
Interesting.
yeah,
that the cultural phenomena is overtaking the landscape. And the question on the table, since we're all financial guys, is the cultural phenomena overtaking the financial markets? Because it seems to me they are. And it looks to me that before you take a position in anything, you're looking at the political climate and the landscape because it's changing so much radically. And what was
yeah,
true a week ago, 4 weeks ago, is no longer true. Anything like that. The world has literally changed as a result of this election. And I think it's not just the election, it's the fact that the public has spoken in the US and, as Freddie said, become visible. They come out of the closet and they're waving flags and shaking their fists at the media and shaking their fists at the political landscape. And you're not seeing it to that extent in every country, but the
I,
undercurrent's there. This is a
I,
global
I
phenomenon.
I read something this morning that was interesting, and how did he phrase it? He said there were two changes in the timeline continuum where we veered off. One was July 16th, I guess it was. If Trump would have been killed, then the whole world would have went in a totally different pattern. And the other was November 5th, right? And they both center around Trump. The timeline, the global timeline, changed dramatically on those 2 days. I thought that was
Yeah,
an interesting point.
yeah, that's valid.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, guys, I appreciate you coming on. I think it was a good, spirited conversation. I learned a lot, as always, and I wish you guys both a great day. And happy Thanksgiving to all who are watching. And enjoy your pumpkin soup, right?
Will
Your
do.
Thanksgiving, what
Thank
is
you,
it?
guys.
Your cod, your Brazilian cod tomorrow. You're celebrating that. That's great.
Well, it was a little
Yeah,
more cerebral than normal, I would say.
Yeah.
We talked about a lot of sort of market esoteric factors, but it was provocative. And
Yeah.
I'm going to go away and think about some of the things that Alex had to say. We don't really get a glimpse of what's happening in countries outside of us. You know, our view is tends to be Americentric.
Yeah.
So it was useful for me to hear your thoughts on Latin America and London in particular.
Yeah.
So have a good Thanksgiving, guys.
We got to find ways
happy
to be
Thanksgiving.
long
Thank you, guys.
Argentina and short Brazil. All right,
Take
guys.
care.
Take care. Thanks
Bye bye.
again.
Yeah, bye bye.